Hi, fantasy romance readers. Today on the podcast, FT Lukens joins me to talk about their newest release, Otherworldly. This queer YA urban fantasy has absolutely everything I love in a story. Unforgettable characters, gods, magic bargains, and danger that kept me up late turning the pages.
So I got an email that was like, "Hey, pre-orders are really great. Maybe I'll be calling you after 5 during the week." And I was like, "Okay." And then I got a call from my editor, Kate Proswimmer, and we got my agent on the line, and it was a three-way call. And I was actually in my kitchen, um, and she said, "Hey, so this is Ever After," landed at number 3, and I just dropped to the floor. Like, I just went all the way down to a crouch and was, like, on the floor crouched in my kitchen, and I was like, "Oh my god."
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah, it was really surreal. There was a lot of, folklore research that I did. Really, I just kept a lot of website tabs open. I wrote a short story about a knight and a princess and dating myself. But back in the day, we had computer labs, and you would go to the computer lab and you would, do a computer game in the lab or whatever. And we had a specific computer lab teacher. And she liked my story and she printed it out and hung it up in the computer lab. And I was one of the only students that had their story posted.
It's amazing. So, from the computer lab to the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah, for this book, yes. Otherworldly is the title that we started out with. My other titles, no. This is the one that stuck. And then I won't even tell you what In Deeper Waters was. It was bad. But it was one of those titles, those kind of blank of blank and blank titles, kind of thing that are popular. But mine was not well done. Um, and it changed, which was good. It's for the better. And I'm happy whenever someone else says, what do you think of this title? Do you think this is better? And I'll be like, yes, thank you.
I hope you'll take a listen as we chat about amigurumi, getting the call that they hit the New York Times bestseller list, and so much more. Otherworldly releases everywhere April 2nd. I'm Kelly Chase, and you're listening to the Fantasy Romance Podcast. So, really quick, the one thing I wanted to ask you about, because I think we have this in common, and it's a pretty rare hobby to have in common, but I'll just ask you about amigurumi. Are you a crocheter? Tell me all about that.
Oh yeah, I crochet. I learned from my roommate in college, and she had learned from her grandma. And so she taught me how to crochet. And I started off doing like really bad blankets and granny squares and that kind of stuff. And then kind of set it aside and would occasionally like make a scarf or a beanie or something, but wasn't like super into it. And then several years ago, I had a book coming out that had a Sasquatch in it, and I had learned about making amigurumi, and I was like, "I wanna make a Sasquatch." And so I bought a pattern and watched YouTube videos and everything and made one, and then made a few more, and then kinda really got into it, and now I have, like, a huge yarn hoard and all kinds of specialty hooks, and, um, like, this have favorites and favorite patterns that I do, and, yeah, and I follow a bunch of on my Instagram, I follow a bunch of, like, crocheters, and I watch crochet YouTube videos. It's become like a whole rabbit hole.
Okay, are you a wood handle or a metal handle person or other? Bamboo,
Oh,
what's your preference?
no, I like, the squishy, like, handles.
Like the
Um,
ergonomic?
yes, like, I can't do the metal anymore because, they hurt my hands, and I don't like the big I use them, they're not my favorite, the big plastic ones, um, but I really like my metal hooks with my, like, squishy grip.
Isn't it unbelievable? Like, so have you crocheted something for every book that you've released, or is it just when the spirit hits you, it's your outlet? How do you crochet?
Yeah, I try to do or find a pattern that I feel like kinda suits, um, the book I'm working on or the book that's coming out, and for when In Deeper Waters came out, I made a bunch of octopods, and took pictures of, the book with crocheted octopods, and that was kind of the real start of it. And now I've taken pictures and put them on my Instagram of my books with different crocheted, things that I have made. And I've done it for other people's books too, not so much like based on the content of the book, but I did a post about using different colored yarns to make things and matching that color with a friend's book.
That is so adorable. I have absolutely not brought that like crossed into my writing life, but I did the same or very similar thing for my dad's. I think it was his 60th birthday. He was really, really close to my dog. And of course, I was a grown up, so my dog lived with me, but my dad loved this dog. So I made him a crocheted mini of my dog. And then I took Spike and the mini Spike on adventures like all through the neighborhood, had him
Oh,
like
that's fun.
steering through a fence and a cat. So I had him take pictures and then I gave my dad the album of photos with the little Spike. And I was impressed with myself. I think dad liked it too, but I had a blast. So have you been writing as long as you've been crocheting? You picked up crochet in college. When did you start writing?
I started writing, my first short story I ever wrote was I was in 3rd grade, and it was for a class assignment, and I wrote a short story about a knight and a princess and dating myself, but back in the day, we had computer labs, and you would go to the computer lab and you would, do a computer game in the lab or whatever, and we had a specific computer lab teacher. And she liked my story and she printed it out and hung it up in the computer lab. And I was one of the only students that had their story posted. And then from there I was a constant reader. I read all the time when I was younger. Until you got to high school and it really kills your love of reading, but no, I read a lot as a younger kid and as a preteen and a teen, and just loved stories and consuming stories and media, especially fantasy and sci-fi. And that really kind of pushed me towards, understanding story structure and understanding narrative and characterization and those kinds of things, and recognizing that just from reading so much that I was able to kind of take those things and write and write short stories and fan works and all sorts of stuff.
It's amazing. So from the computer lab to the New York Times bestseller list. It's pretty much the dream. Pretty much the dream. At what point in your life then did it become a thing that you thought, I could actually sell a book? Like I could do this. This is a job.
It wasn't until I was much older and I realized that it was something that I was good at. I was already in an established career. I worked in social work field, and that's what I had my degrees in. And I was doing that and had done that, and had a family and all that kind of thing. So it wasn't until later that I was like, oh, I have the skills. This is something that I enjoy. Can it become a career? And I started off with a small press, Interlude Press, and then did some books with them, and then kind of wrote a book over a course of several years that I felt like could be something that could go to a big, get an agent and go to a bigger press, and it did. And here I am.
Which of the books, though, you've got some absolutely brilliant titles. I absolutely love them. But which of your books hit the New York Times bestseller list first? What was the title that gave you that label?
So This Is Ever After was the first one. Yeah, that was the first one, and then Spellbound was the second one.
And like, how does that actually happen for an author? Like, do you literally get a call like when you're nominated for like an Oscar, like you're waiting by the phone, or how did you find out?
So So This Is Ever After, how I found out was, the list comes out one day during the week. I don't even remember, but everybody knows about it the night before. But it's not until like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night that it comes out, and it doesn't come out like to everybody. It comes out to like, publishing houses and that kind of thing. So I got an email that was like, hey, pre-orders are really great. Maybe I'll be calling you after 5 during the week. And I was like, okay. And then I got a call from my editor, Kate Proswimmer, and we got my agent on the line, and it was a 3-way call. And I was actually in my kitchen. And she said, "Hey, since Ever After landed at number 3," and I just dropped to the floor. Like, I just went all the way down to a crouch and was, like, on the floor crouched in my kitchen, and I was like, "Oh my god."
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah, it was really surreal, just unexpected, and I could hear people cheering in the background and then I immediately started, like, texting my brother and letting folks close to me know. It's a weird moment because it's everything that you're kind of working towards for years and years and years, and then it happens, and it's, like, "Oh my gosh," and then the pressure is like, "Can you do it again?" So,
And you did, and you did.
yeah, I did.
Unbelievable. It gets me excited just hearing about it, like the joy and the excitement. Like it's one thing to spend all the time that you spent, I mean, since you were a child perfecting magic systems. I mean, that's one of the things. So we're actually here to talk about just this one, and I'll have to find it. Otherworldly, it's right there. It's such a beautiful book, such a beautiful cover, and I can't imagine how book after book after book you put all this time and heart in it, and then reviews are one thing. Like I don't know if you're an author who reads reviews, but then to just see those sales results, like
I will only read the reviews that, my publisher and agent send to me that say, "Hey, this publication said something nice," and I'll say, "Oh, that's great." But otherwise, I don't look at them. Sometimes they come across your feed or, someone tags you in one or that kind of thing. And as a younger author, when my first books were coming out, you get it. I could see like the appeal of, oh, I want to know kind of thing. But now that I've been around a bit, I'm like, no, I'm good. Thank you. But you mentioned the cover, of Otherworldly, and, so I have this is actually the finished copy, and I'm sorry, my light is bad, but, and the back, um, but I have the same cover artist for In Deeper Waters, This Is Ever After, Spellbound, and Otherworldly, and their name is Sam Schechter, and they are amazing, um, and, uh, they just are so talented at bringing my characters to life and creating a beautiful piece of artwork to go on the cover. So I'm very, very thankful that Sam came onto the team with In Deeper Waters and has stayed with us.
it's got to be so exciting too to see it come to life in such a different way. Like when you're writing, do you put like inspiration boards of your characters up, or do you have ideas in your mind, like moods, vibes, things like that? Or do you just, is it all like right in here? You just hold on to it in your head and it comes out?
I am horrible at like when people ask me, "Oh, who's your fan cast for your characters?" I don't know. Um, I really don't. I try my best to when I'm writing kind of think about the characters and their situations and the settings and those kinds of things. For Otherworldly, I was very intentional in the settings that I used. Throughout the novel, there's this kind of pervasive eeriness. It's because the settings are of things that you would find that are liminal spaces. So like in a dark alleyway, in a cornfield, an abandoned mall. I mean, like, those are there's still, like, sweet scenes that are going on, between the 2 main characters or, a thrilling scene happening, but the setting itself is odd or eerie, and unsettling. That was really intentional of that kind of vibe or mood that I wanted throughout the narrative and how I used the different settings of when a lot of the story takes place to be, in those kind of odd places.
It's one thing to be drawn in because, I mean, from that very first line, you built the scene, you set that location so beautifully. I was like so hooked. But then it just gets better because Ellery and Knox, Ellery is a character I want on my team no matter what is happening. What inspired you to write these characters, this magic system? Because it is so clever and inventive and interesting. Like I was really riveted trying to figure out like how is this going to resolve? How is this going to resolve?
Well, I don't wanna give too much away, but it's a little bit of a retelling, but not really. And I was kind of brainstorming what I wanted to write next, and I knew I wanted to write a paranormal story and have one of the main characters be a paranormal figure. But I wanted to make sure that it was someone that even though they were paranormal, that could still be relatable and didn't seem untouchable and didn't seem maybe too old or too young. Like trying to strike a balance of how that character would interact with a teen character. Um, and so that's why Knox has certain characteristics about like only learning through the world through television and not having memory of, past lives and those kinds of things to make him still relatable and still teenager-ish, coming of age-ish. Um, and then so I wanted to pair that with the complete opposite kind of person. And that's where we get Ellery, who is a skeptic of all things supernatural because they've just been burned in the past and has had their kind of faith in their religion really tested and have given up some hope about a lot of things, and also has had to grow up quickly and make some hard decisions for a young adult teenager. And so I wanted to pair these two different types of characters together and then put them in this setting to where it makes sense for each of their characterizations. And then I wanted to just have some fun and do a crossroads bargain. And originally, the story started out as a high fantasy, and I was writing it as a high fantasy for the first like chapter and a half or so, and then I was like, this isn't working. Um, and so that's when it became a contemporary fantasy, and some of the details changed, but the two characters pretty much stayed the same.
I know writers don't like to pick favorites, but do you have like favorite scenes from this book? Like without spoiling or giving anything away, like are there moments where you were just like you knew you needed it to be in this book?
The scene where they first meet in the dark alleyway was a scene that I had originally written in the high fantasy draft. And when I switched it to contemporary fantasy, I was like, don't want to lose this scene. It just changed to a dark alleyway instead of to a forest, instead of being a forest. But that was a scene that I knew I wanted to keep as the way they met. Um, uh, uh, they met before, but you know what I mean. But the way they really connect in that dark alleyway. So I really wanted to keep that. And then there's a scene later in the book in the abandoned mall that took a lot of rewriting, but got to the point where it became one of my favorites. Just the scene, and I don't want to spoil it, but the scene where you're not quite sure which one of them is making it out, I guess.
Well, I don't want to give any spoilers, but I think there are so many amazing and so super memorable scenes that I just loved so much. But I think like the road trip with the minor god was just like that moment. I was like, this is the dream. Like, just, I don't want to say any more to give it away, but, and you have so many not heartbreaking, but heart lightening moments with like Charlie and Zeta. Like there, you've got a beautiful supporting cast, so much literal found family. And then Diego. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous world. Now, do you take a lot of time to set up, are the magic systems and the mythology that's in play in each of your books, are they all very, very different? So your books could be read in any order and there's no overlap?
Oh, there's no overlap at all. Well, I will say that for in Deeper Waters, This Ever After Spellbound, and Otherworldly, they all have very different magic systems. There's no overlap. I get that question a lot. They're like, well, do they take place in the same world? I'm like, no, none of them. They are completely separate. It would be fun to try and tie them all together, but I just don't think it would be possible. But yeah, they're all completely different. And the type of world building or world or magic system or whatever it is, it really depends on the book itself. If that is the main focus of the story, like in Spellbound, that's the part that I worked on first, because that is the core of that story, is actually the magic system. But for like, so This Is Ever After and for Otherworldly, it's part of the world that these characters are living in and everything. Otherworldly has more structure than So This Is Ever After. So This Is Ever After is a lot of hand waving because that's like a D&D romance. So it's a lot more intricate, but it's not the focus of the story. It's surrounding these characters and they have to move within this world.
And in terms of, so your mythology, your magic system, do you keep notes? Do you keep track, or do you find yourself like forgetting things? That the way that writers keep track of things is always so interesting to me, like post-it notes, napkins, color coding.
For your Otherworldly, I have a notebook that I wrote a lot of different things down in that I made wanted to make sure I included and other and also wanted to make sure that meshed well together. And I knew that there were different gods and goddesses that were going to show up and different kind of mythologies that were going to blend together. There was a lot of folklore research that I did. Really, I just kept a lot of website tabs open. um, to make sure I could click back and be like, "Wait a minute, let me just make sure this is right before I add it." And then also I use note cards. I use a lot of note cards, to write down, like, little things, like, in this scene, I wanna make sure they say this line of dialogue, and in this scene, this is the point of this scene, and this is what we're moving towards kinda thing. So, no, I'm not someone that can keep it all in my head and keep it straight. I used to, but I can't do that anymore. So, yeah, it's either written down, it's in a website tab, or it's in a notebook, or my editor catches it and is like, did you mean to do this?" And I'll be like, "No, I didn't. Thanks for the catch."
Now, have you been able to keep and pick all your own titles? Otherworldly is so perfect for this book. Like, is that the title that you started out with?
Yeah, for this book, yes. Otherworldly is the title that we started out with. My other titles, no. This is the one that stuck. Spellbound was Spellbound originally, changed to something else, and then changed back to Spellbound. So This Is Ever After originally was How to Survive Ever After. And then it changed. And then I won't even tell you what In Deeper Waters was. It was bad. But it was one of those titles, those kind of you know, blank of blank and blank titles, kind of thing that are popular. But mine was not well done. Um, and it changed, which was good. It's for the better. And I'm happy whenever someone else says, "Oh, what do you think of this title? Do you think this is better?" And I'll be like, "Yes, thank you."
That's the thing. Some authors are so terrible at titles, so terrible at blurbs, but phenomenal at writing the books. So if I were going to pick and choose, I think I'd go with the what's inside the covers, not necessarily what goes on the outside. And so you are with me sitting down today to chat because Otherworldly is about to come out, right? So can you give us the details? When can we expect to see it? It's a beautiful hardcover. I'm so fortunate to have one. Thank you. Thank you.
It is coming out April 2nd. And so as of us talking, it's about a month. It is a month away, a month and a day away, and I'm really excited for it to come out. It's a little weird. I keep calling it my weird little book, a book that I feel privileged that I was able to write, that I got to write, because it is a little different than my other books, and it is a little kind of offbeat because it is something that I've wanted to write for a while, and a story that I've wanted to tell. It wasn't working in the original way I wanted to tell it, so it became something else. But it's the parts are still there. So I'm very excited for another beautiful cover. The great team at Simon and Schuster. But I really just hope readers that even though it is a little different than my previous works, that they'll like the characters in the story.
And do you have in-person virtual tours planned? Do you actually get out and get to talk to readers face to face?
I have a couple of things that I'm doing face to face. I'm doing a launch at Malaprops bookstore in Asheville on April 2nd, and it is both a virtual and in-person event. So folks can sign up for either. So if you're not in the Asheville area, you can still come. I get to do that with Beth Revis, who is an amazing science fiction and fantasy author who has written for Star Wars and has written a great fantasy book, Give the Dark My Love, that I absolutely love and was one of the books that taught me about dual POV. So then I also am going to do the Greater Charlotte book crawl in it's that same week, it's April. So I will be participating in that. And that's going to be at a bookstore in Kannapolis. And will be one of the in-person authors there. And then I will be at Decatur's Children's Book Fest, which is in May. That was just announced that myself and Mark Oshiro are gonna be the 2 of the YA authors there, and then I'll be in September, I'll be at DragonCon, which I normally go every September, so Labor Day weekend, I will be at DragonCon on the participating in the YA track.
Honestly, a book crawl sounds like the only kind of crawl I ever wanna do. That is, like, aspiration now. That sounds like so much fun.
I have not done it before. A friend of mine sent me the info and said, "I know that you live in Asheville, this is happening in Charlotte," and I was like, "Sure, sign me up, I will come." So, yeah, so hopefully that's fun.
Please bring one. I'm sure there's something like it in Los Angeles, but please crawl your way over this way so that we can meet someday in person and I can tell you how much I loved Otherworldly. Thank you for sitting down with me to talk about it. I'll just say Arabelle too. She could need her own book. She really needs her own story. I could see this one becoming a series because there's so much here. So I loved it.